12 months on from the SOS Dairy campaign, British dairy farming is in a far better place and looking to the future with more optimism. We're here at the Livestock Event at the NEC in Birmingham to talk to banks, unions and processors about what the future holds for British dairy. We're 12 months on practically from SOS Dairy.
Yeah.
What difference do you think that campaign made, and is the industry in a more positive place now?
I think there are two aspects. If you look at what happened to the industry as a whole, there are two things that have happened. You've had significant moves in the market, and that's driven some change in there. Yes, SOS Dairy have actually brought to the fore a lot of topics around governance and how people actually are represented in the industry, and I think that's been very successful. I think there's still some way to go. I think code of practice is still not entirely adopted across the industry, and I think that needs to be followed through. But generally, I think it's been a very good thing.
SOS Dairy came out of the pressures that were put on the industry 12 months ago. It was a coming together. I think it was one of the most successful campaigns that has hit the agricultural industry over the last 10, 20, 30 years. But it was born out of necessity.
What did it achieve?
It has put some balance back into the industry. It has shown that at the end of the day, milk producers do need to have a sustainable milk price. We have tried to put a voluntary code of practice into place, which is still ongoing, but milk producers are definitely in a better place today than they were 12 months ago.
Definitely different. A lift in milk price is always welcome. There have been several more recently. Whether it's coincidence they were announced just before this event is another matter, but the optimism, I think, is coming back. It's a ways to go. Feed prices are still high, although cereal prices have been coming down recently. The most recent milk price was actually on the back of rising feed prices because it's running 3 months behind. But the optimism is back, the sun's shining, first cut silage was light, second cut silage is being taken pretty well, and full silage clamps always make people feel comfortable. So I'd say the optimism is better. We're not quite at the highs that we have been, but it's definitely there, and people are responding. It's great.
And what are the positives that dairy producers can, kind of take confidence in going forward?
Global milk prices have picked up. There is demand for milk and milk products on the world, growing between 2 and 3% per year. In the UK, we have a deficit of £1.5 billion on dairy product imports, which at the end of the day, if dairy farmers in the UK had a fair challenge, a fair balance, and were allowed to make a tidy profit, then we could fulfill a lot of that deficit. And I think government understands that. I just hope they can act. Also, the voluntary code of practice, which a lot of companies, or the major dairy buyers, have implemented, has definitely changed the balance between milk producer and his buyer.
And what are some of the challenges you've seen customers face over the last 12 months, and how have you approached that as a bank, maybe from a lending point of view?
The biggest challenges have undoubtedly been a combination of any of the above: low milk price, shortage of forage, whether in the field or in the clamp, and high bought-in feed prices, higher energy prices, and both in terms of electricity and fuel. So a lot of those things all combining at the same time have created a cash flow issue for quite a lot of businesses. Our response is that we support farming customers. So if they've got a cash flow issue, if they let us know what it is, when it's going to hit, what the scale of it is, for any viable business, we'll support them. That's what we're here to do, and we have done big time. Our lending is up, definitely. We've spent a lot of time recently, particularly extending overdrafts because of that working capital requirement, and for the most part we're very willing to do so. We'll support any viable business as long as we understand what the requirement is and why. If we don't understand that, then we're in a difficult place, but we can't second guess that. We rely on our customers to tell us, and we'll respond accordingly, which we've been doing.
You mentioned the code of practice. Has that, even though it hasn't got universal adoption, has it made a difference to the marketplace in the UK?
I think it has. I think it's actually helped to bring more clarity to the marketplace. People, farmers can actually see a little bit better, perhaps than was traditionally the case, what is happening in terms of the pricing and how people actually go about things. And I think that's got to be beneficial. It can't not help.
You mentioned there about, talking about overdrafts and working capital. Are you seeing more requests now for maybe investment in infrastructure as people try and gear up and take advantage of the opportunities that are there?
That's a good question. We have seen requirement for infrastructure investment all of the time. During the dark days of the back end of last year, early months of this year, when the spring didn't happen, some of the appetite for those longer term investments did wane a little. The sun started shining, however, and the confidence is back, as we've said, and the request for those sorts of projects is definitely back on the table. And again, we're responding appropriately, particularly, for example, in the field of renewables. We talked about energy prices earlier on, where high energy prices are an issue for everybody. Farmers are uniquely placed, really, because they've got the roof space, they've got the wind space, as it were, where the wind blows. So solar, wind, hydro, where it's appropriate, and AD plants, which are a slightly different conversation because they're a process rather than simply an installation. But we're supporting all of those because it just makes good business sense. And where the business is viable and they want to increase their viability, we're spending a lot on that. We own, in fact, I inverted commas, own a £100 million fund devoted to renewables, which is about 75% spent at the moment. We expect that we'll get through that whole lot by the end of this year, and then I have absolutely no doubt we can top it up again, because that's just one of the things that farmers logically should be doing, and we're supporting them.
You mentioned there about farmers being able to make a profit and being I suppose in an equitable market. You've spoken about equitable contracts. What are the barriers to growth for the average dairy farmer at the moment?
The barrier for growth has been lack of confidence, because milk producers have had such a torrid time over the last 5-6 years. Confidence has been sapped out of the industry. And in our Compete to Grow strategy document, we state that the majority of dairy farmers, or dairy farmers within the UK, need a minimum of 3.5 pence per litre to invest in infrastructure, and I will repeat, in infrastructure, because over the last 5, 6, 7 years, milk producers have not had any profits to reinvest.
From your perspective at First Milk, what are the main market drivers and what are the opportunities for your members in the coming years?
Well, undoubtedly, the main market driver is the increase in global demand for dairy product. Yes, I think we're going to see some volatility around that, because supply and demand will never be exactly in step, and that will create some volatility. But in terms of opportunity, without a doubt, those new consumers to our dairy products will generate value for us as dairy farmers. They'll generate opportunities for new dairy product, as well as the old traditional commodity type products.
On the world market, which, as you say, is influencing things a lot, what are the big opportunities out there? What are the big products? And also, what are the big regions that we can potentially export into?
Well, first of all, on our Compete to Grow strategy document, first of all, we want to replace imports, because we have the processing capacity in the UK. Over 50% of our market is liquid. We produce a lot of cheese. We need to be producing a lot more added value. And that's what I just talked about: yogurts, butter, into the UK. As far as opportunities abroad, anything added value, I do not believe supplying milk into commodities such as just ordinary skim milk powder is the answer for UK dairy farmers. But anything that can add value, whether it's the US or Southeast Asia, Middle East, North Africa, we can be in a position to supply.
And what are some of the other emerging markets? I mean, people talk about Russia and India, but is there anything beyond that?
Russia is a massive importer of cheese. India is very well self-sufficient in milk. Southeast Asia, as far as a massive global buyer of powder, whole milk powder, skim milk powder, but Russia, massive importer of cheese. North Africa, Middle East, massive importers of powders, plus added value powders. And that's the market I would like to see the UK possibly have an opportunity.
And you're a dairy farmer yourself. Are you more confident this summer than you were last summer about the prospects for the industry and for businesses?
Yeah, well, 12 months ago you could not get less confident. The industry was on its knees. Yes, with the marketplace, the global prospects, you see demand for products. Yes, the industry is looking forward with definitely more positive look going forward. We have had terrible weather in the last 12 months as well, hit by massive input costs. Hopefully input costs have stopped increasing. the weather does look a lot more favourable than it did 12 months ago, and a better milk price. So it does all help.
The dairy industry is in a more positive place now than it was 12 months ago. Do you see that going forward for the next 12 months, that we'll be in an even stronger position in 2014?
I think if my crystal ball was clearer than anybody else's, I'd be a very wealthy man at this point. If you look at trends, certainly in terms of production, and not just in the UK, but actually across continental Europe and further afield, you would have to say that the next 12 months would be looking fairly positive. But undoubtedly, we are going to see, a peak in the market, more volume coming forward, and then prices are likely to fall again. This is the volatility that we're all talking about. And in many ways, as farmers, we're our own worst enemies, because when prices are high, we all tend to go out and produce more milk, which then leads to a lower price. And I don't think, there is no mechanism that'll actually prevent that happening. So we've just got to recognise it and deal with it.